morning.
Morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Good evening here, good morning there, good morning. Okay, so, so we can start our session here. Although I'm pretty sure there are a few people who's going live also, because I just had the interview with Salvatore like maybe 3 hours ago. But okay, so let's start. So good evening, welcome to Toma Sessions Live. This is Richie Cruz, your host, and today, just to give you a short introduction, our guest for today is, I would call, my hero since I started bartending. Basically, most bartenders here in the Philippines during my generation started with flair. So we were talking about 1998, and from that time, I've actually known of the Flair Bartenders Association, and this our guest now has been part of that organization, or maybe founded, but we'll know more once we interview him. And he's been responsible for the website barmagic.com. And fast forward, he's here right now to share with us a very good platform that they organized in Las Vegas. And yeah, without further ado, let's welcome Tobin Ellis. Okay. Hello there.
How are you?
Good. It's I have to make a shout out to Sanya, because you and her go way back, I guess, and I don't know if Sanya told you how we met in New York. Yeah, we met unexpectedly over a masterclass over rum, and then that was it. And then I knew what she was doing in Vegas, but I really didn't know that both of you had the connection when it comes to the Vegas scene. So maybe for starters, can you tell us something about you? How did you start in the industry, basically?
I was in food service and in fast food as a kid, as a teenager in high school. And, I had a paper route since I was 10, so I was always working. But I think the first real job is I washed dishes in my college in the student union a couple days a week. And that just led to it's part-time bar backing for a graduation ceremony. And the next thing I was waiting tables and bartending, and just kind of grew from there. So that was in the very late 80s. So like 89, I think. Right about 1990. Yeah.
Oh, mm-hmm. And then what was your very first job? Is that with TGI Fridays?
No, No, I've been bartending.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I've been bartending for about 6 years. When I joined Fridays, I'd heard about there about an hour from my college through what we call here, we have a snow belt, which is just a region of an area where there's a lot more snow accumulation. So most of the time, people don't want to drive through it. So I was driving through the snow belt. I had full-time student. I had 2 part-time jobs, and this was my 3rd part-time job. And I was also social chair for an organization throwing parties and events. So I just I knew the company, and I knew that at that time they had an immaculate reputation, especially for training. And I also, I remember with you going back 20 years, that was really big time in my life for bottle flipping and for flair, and Fridays was very big into it. So I wanted to just go there and see if I could meet anyone else that flipped bottles and was really into bartending and cared about recipes and drinks and all that good stuff. Was kind of a pretty passionate bartending nerd. So I just drove out there every weekend to work double, close opens, and work as much as I could.
Okay, and so how did FBA come about?
I guess the quick version is that while I worked for Fridays, I joined up with a couple guys that I had met, and we did a pilot program to try to reinvigorate the company, because this was right about the time they started to, in my opinion, started to drop the ball. And this was like 96, 95, and I wanted to bring back some of the culture that Fridays had built their reputation on behind the bar. They seem to be gravitating towards trying to build in malls and suburbs and kind of dumb everything down in order to grow revenue and same store sales, but to grow units. And so the idea was just to take some really good bartenders from Fridays, take them around the country, do trainings, do PR, radio shows in the morning, big happy hours, bottle flipping, all that kind of good stuff, make drinks. And the first time we did it without any sponsors, there was 5 of us. 4 of us drove up from the DC area up to Boston, and we raised, I think it was like $8,000 on a Monday night 25 years ago for charity.
Wow.
So, one of my director of operations in DC, I said, I really want to present this to you. And she said, yeah, sure. Just put something in writing. And I remember thinking like, oh, you don't know me very well. So like the next day I had a wire bound, laminated color deck with costing, strategy, partnerships, logistics, like it was just done. And she was like, oh, wow. But ultimately Fridays passed on the whole program. And the idea was just to build a network of bartenders through the digital space that could connect, share ideas, videos, help each other. So when they passed on it, I just kind of said, fuck it. And that was how the FBA was born. It was just a network of bartenders. So I went down to Florida, heard about a competition after meeting Alan Mays. And, at the time, Alan was sort of the forefather, kind of the Ken Hall and Alan Mays and Bill Long in the United States.
Yeah, Ken Hall.
Sort of the Mount Rushmore of flair bartending for the U.S. and probably a lot of the world.
Yes.
So I met Alan, and he told me that there were bigger competitions with like-minded people. So I went down to check it out, and he sent me a video to say, well, just so you know, this is who you're going to be competing against. And at that time, I was kind of like big fish in a little pond. Like I beat everybody. So I was like, yeah, it's cool. Like, they'll be good too. And I put this tape in, and I went, holy shit, I'm in so much trouble. They were so much better than I was. Like their difficulty was insane. So, I went down there and had fun, did my little shtick, my little routine. And more importantly, I met a lot of great guys that I'm still friends with. Dean Cerneals was there.
Yeah.
Ken Hall, Jim Allison, Mark Schultz. It's a really, really long list of guys that were there. Robbie from Ohio, and we all just signed a piece of paper, put down some phone numbers, started mailing things out. No, not everyone had email yet, and Alan put his name on it, and that gave it a lot of credibility. Alan, I think, signed the piece of paper first. Ken signed it second, and as soon as they did that, the whole room just lined up to sign the piece of paper. So it wouldn't have gone anywhere without those two. But that was it, and then Jim came on and did the website, and it grew to about, I want to say it's like 10,000 members in about 200 countries at its prime.
Thousands. Yeah. I was one of the first, if not the only online member from the Philippines, because I remember at that time, because I really wanted to, by the time the internet was being introduced to the world, I really wanted to see what flair is like outside of the Philippines, and the only way I can do that is through communicating with you through online. So it had its way. In fact, I was able to bring in WFA for a time when I brought in Tom Dyer, Tomek, and Marek here. But for some, I don't know, maybe my calling wasn't in flair. Maybe it was more on the drink side and the management side. But it's nice now that both how would you call it? Both disciplines in bartending are actually together here, so it's a very good thing. Oh, by the way, one more thing. I our guest also here, guys, is the one responsible for the Perlink bar, right? This is also one of the amazing contributions that you have for the industry. In fact, empowering bartenders to design or to have their say when it comes to the bar design. Or when did that came about?
So it started officially about 5.5 years ago, but I had been trying to get anyone to allow me to design a bar since, I don't even remember. It's probably since a year or two after I was behind a bar. You know, most of us went through that same experience. It's like, who designed this? This doesn't make any sense. And you try to move things around and Jimmy rig and MacGyver stuff so that it works. In the first client that said they would allow me to design a bar was in, what year was that? 2003. And it was in Kathmandu, Nepal. And,
oh, wow.
And I designed this nightclub, the entire club, and it never got built. War broke out between the Maoists and the government, and it never happened. But that kind of, I think with everything, you know, sometimes it's just about knocking on enough doors and getting enough no's for something to happen. And I knew that because when I was 18, I had a sales job. So I sold these knives called Cutco knives. There's got to be at least one or two people that laugh and know that. They're these really great kitchen knives, and the whole program was to use college kids. We didn't really go door to door, but they taught you a lot of business skills, and one of them was learning about your closing percentages and lead percentages. And the guy that was in the office where I worked in Rochester, New York, named Bill Harbison, he just happened to be the best sales trainer in the country. And he took me under his wing and kind of showed me the ropes. And I was like, look, every no is it's just math. It's just percentages. So once you know what your percentages are, just like an athlete, like a baseball player, then you just know when you're going to hit the ball. So just get out there and make a bunch of appointments. If you make 100 appointments, you're going to get 87 appointments. If you make 87 appointments, you're going to do this much in sales. So that's kind of how I've always taken the approach, is like, no doesn't make me feel upset in business. No to me in business means I didn't present it properly. I didn't show them the value. I failed to show them what is important or valuable. And so I get excited because that means if I improve my offering, I'm going to hear more yeses. So I kept asking my clients who were just letting me train bartenders and do drink design. I said, you know, this will be so much more successful if you let me design the bar. And, you know, I always get like, you're just a bartender. We have people for that. And I'm like, yeah, those people don't know what they're doing. They're not bartenders. They may know how to design documents, but they don't know how to design bartender workstations. Yeah. So in 2007, I got another couple more design jobs. I got this one in Poughkeepsie, New York. And the owner was a contractor. And he had this design that had this huge wine tower behind the bar. But he was hiring me to do this cocktail program for this 400-seat restaurant. And I said, well, why are you hiring me if you're making wine the focal point? He said, I don't know. It's just something we were going to do. And I said, well, give me that wine tower. I want to do something with it. So I showed him what I wanted to do. We built this elevated cockpit, self-contained kind of show bar. And on the weekend nights, we routed the printer through that bar so one person could do all the cocktails and the rest of the bartenders could just knock out drinks. And it was very successful. So that kind of launched the design career. And then Perlick actually reached out to me and asked if I would design they wanted to know if I would design, it was like I think it was just like an insert for a sink or something, and put my name on it. Okay. And I was like, yeah, but no, let's do the whole bar. And I just told him what I thought of the design industry and what it was missing and what it needed. And that was about 7 years ago. The product launched about 5 years ago. And yeah, that's where we are. But I have to give a shout out I always do to Maestro, to Salvatore Calabrese, because when I visited Salvatore at 50 at the Playboy Club in London and saw stood behind a bar that he, as a bartender, had designed. He'd actually designed the equipment. That was one of those moments where I went, I can do this. Like, I've been failing. No one's hired me. But now that I've seen it and he's done it, if he did it, I can do it.
I can do it.
He made the model. He's done this. He's broken down the wall. Now I can follow in his footsteps. And now we're seeing that on a mass scale. I mean, bartenders are designing bars and equipment all the time now, and it's a great thing. So he's the first bartender I know to design a bar, and, hats off. Not for long, though.
Yeah. That was one of the things that we touched on, and in fact, he has his own bar tools. He designed the new the bullet shaker. Oh, that's pretty dope. I mean,
yeah, he's a big inspiration for me. He's always been kind of an idol. I was, when I went to that club, I was with my girlfriend at the time who was in the industry, and after I went behind the bar and came back, she said, I've seen you in front of celebrities. I've seen you on national TV. I've never seen you nervous like you just were to go behind his bar. And I was like, he didn't, this is a guy who didn't know who I was. And I read a book he wrote that inspired me. I saw his design work. I saw his hospitality, his cocktails, all of it, and just went, wow, like it's just always an inspiration to me. So, for sure.
Nice. So, did you have did you enter a course of hospitality also to begin with? Do you have a hospitality background?
Nope. Started washing dishes and just learning on the fly. The industry out here, I think in a lot of places, but out here, it mostly, at least in my era coming up, it was just seat of your pants, learn on the fly. You either got good at it or you didn't. And then there were training opportunities, but not until probably, I think it would be fair to say not until what probably bar was, beverage alcohol resource, did we have any sort of national platform of training for bartenders that was something like what you would get if you went to a Johnson & Wales or an FIU or a Cornell or whatever, that was focused on hourly workers. But most of the schools are focused on management more and more.
Okay, but where did you have that? So maybe my question would be, why did you enter bartending to begin with? Were you influenced, or was that like part of the American culture wherein you had to get by and you just happened to know or get acquainted with bartending and you saw that it's a good career?
No, I actually wanted to bartend. I went to college in a college town called Oswego State University in New York at Oswego. And I'd also gone to a school in Vermont called Middlebury, which I couldn't afford to stay at. It was one of the more expensive schools in the country. And when I went back to Oswego, I was out a lot. I was 19, partying, going out to college. And I was at a bar called Gokey's Cheese Shop. Well, it was actually a cheese shop that turned into a bar at night. And I was with a couple friends, and there was a woman behind the bar. And I was watching her work and thinking how fun that would be to be able to not only have something to do, because I've always been someone who can't sit still, and I want to do things and build things, etc. And I thought how fun that would be to be able to just go up and talk to anybody and do something while you're doing it and actually get paid to be out instead of spend money, because I was broke. And within a few minutes, she walked up to me and she just looked at me and we talked a little bit. She goes, you'd be really good at this. And I don't know why she said that, because we didn't really know each other, and she might have just meant a comment, but I just kind of knew that she was right. Like, not that I would be good, but that I would like it. And if I liked it, I would probably be decent at it. So I just tried to get behind the bar, and I went to, I think it was something like 30 bars in Oswego while I was the dishwasher and a waiter at the college. And I tried to apply to be a bartender. One of them actually laughed me out the door because I've always looked very young, or at least I used to. When I was 18, if you saw a picture of me, I honestly looked like I was about 12. So I understood why they laughed. I was used to people, underestimating me. But it didn't feel great, but it didn't dissuade me because I had already had that
Yeah.
training from that sales training. I was like, all right, there's another no. Sweet. I'm one no closer to yes. And I just kept asking and asking, hey, little sis. And I got a yes, and that was it. So.
Okay. I'm curious, where do you get your knack of writing? Was that the passion of yours from day one, or because I read your article, especially in the FBA, and then what you're doing now?
Yeah, I'd love to take a lot of credit for it, but I think it's just an inborn God-given talent. And I don't mean that like I'm talented. I just mean for me, I communicate better in writing than I do with my mouth. I think faster. My brain and my fingers are connected. It's like people will be like, geez, what'd you do? Spend 4 hours typing that Facebook post? I'm like, no, it was like 7 minutes. Like, just when I have thoughts I need to get out of my head, they get out more accurately the way I think them with my writing than they do with my mouth. And my mouth probably gets me in more trouble than anything else. But I don't know what it is. There's just a disconnect between my brain and my mouth, but it's a straight line from my mouth to my fingertips. I mean, my brain to my fingertips. See, I can't even think straight. Now, I did focus on writing a lot. It's not like it magically happened. I wrote a ton. I wrote little books as a kid, colored, books with stories. I wrote in high school and won awards. I went to college at Middlebury for writing. I studied journalism at Oswego. I was a reporter in high school. We had one of the only high schools with a newspaper that was actually on a printing press. I was the editor for that. I wrote all the time, and I think that's anyone who has something they're good at knows that talent's great, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't put it to work.
Yeah.
It's like I had this experience once with a guy. I was at a party. He was playing guitar and he was really good. And he said, I said to him, wow, I always wanted to play guitar. And he grabbed my hand and he turned my fingers over and looked at the ends of my fingers and he went, no, you don't. And I was like, wait, what? He's like, if you wanted to play guitar, you'd have calluses because you'd be playing guitar.
Yeah.
People that want to do things, do things. And I just was like, my mind was blown. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I don't really want to play guitar that bad. And as you remember, like people ask me about the whole flair thing. It's like, I don't have an answer for you. All I know is that my favorite thing to do for 10 years was to go into my backyard with a bunch of empty liquor bottles and throw them around until they broke. And I just enjoyed it. And so I did it all the time. And you couldn't get me to not flip bottles. So I think that's kind of in life, if you can find the thing that you have to do, that you can't be at peace if you don't do it. And it happens to line up with some abilities that you have, that you were given, that are innate. I think that's where those things come together and you end up being somewhat successful at that activity.
Okay. Oh, shout out. Caroline, I think, entered the room. Caroline Rosente, Tales of the Cocktail.
Nice.
Yeah. So she'll be guesting also on Wednesday. So I'm probably surprised that I'm still awake until now. Shout out to everyone. Okay. I remember you had this. It's like you. The way I see, of course, I'm checking the internet. I've been because I look up to you ever since also. And there was a time that you like penetrated the whole Vegas scene. You have this like bar magic and then social meets mixology and whatnot. So how did that come about?
How did social mixology come about?
Yeah, I mean, like how you had your foot basically, or you entered Vegas, like the whole Las Vegas community welcome you with open arms. I mean, because I was in Vegas for like 6 hours, and I was just able to go to a few places because that time I wanted to meet Tim Flippy.
Yeah.
Also, unfortunately, Carnival was closed during that time, so I wasn't able to do so. But I mean, Vegas is small but big at the same time if you're a tourist. So I was wondering, how were you able to get in Vegas?
I gotcha. So that came about because at the time I kind of rode that wave. I was really into flares. I was president of the FBA because I had the whole reason I didn't want to start the FBA. I didn't want to start the FBA. I didn't have some dream to start social mixology. I didn't have some dream to design bars. None of these things. Every one of these things, the dashboard, they were all like, where I want these tools to exist. I want to use these things. Where are they? Oh, nobody built them? All right, fine, I'll do it. That's always been what it was. And so I wanted the FBA to already have existed so I could meet people like Ken Hall and Alan Mays and Bill Long and spend time around them, flipping bottles with them, learning from them, and just having fun. And that was the only way I knew how to do that. So because I did get that opportunity, my competition performances improved a lot. So now I was making the finals of a lot of competitions. Flair was huge in Las Vegas. I was coming out here to help Ken Hall run Legends. And a woman that we knew, Lori Murioka, who is now, runs Hakkasan Group. But at the time, she was a bartender at Carnival Court. And she had heard about an opportunity at Caesar's Palace to open up a flair bar there. So she recommended me. I went in and auditioned. I got the position as the head bartender. And I guess I was the first outside hire at Caesar's Palace since it was built in August 5th, 1966 or something like that. And, it sounds great. It sounds all heady. And I came right into Vegas. I passed I didn't have to take the union classes. I got right in.
Yeah. That
sounds great. But in a community that tight and a union environment, nobody was happy about that except me. Like, not one person. Everybody, I had a bullseye on my back day one. So it was actually a very difficult time, but it did open that door, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful always to Lori, who is now Lori Murioka Kotarski, because her and Adam Kotarski from Carnival Court married, and their children and their beautiful family. But she's really, I'd say a combination probably, it's a lot of things that lined up, but really it was Ken and Lori are responsible for me being in Vegas. And shout out to Ken Hall. I mean, I wouldn't have my career without Ken Hall. He created a number of opportunities for me and did a lot of things behind the scenes that absolutely am why I've been able to do some pretty cool things. So.
Yeah, no, I know. I always had that impression of as an outsider that Vegas really had a tight community. In fact, even now, I remember when I went to LA, 2012, I think that was, or 13, I was able to meet Danilo and Dario, because and Vlad for also, because I was
all good
like
people.
Yeah. So, and then because here we do have an organization, but not as, I would say, the way you guys, or the way organizations in the States are really active or are run properly, and every member, I think, gets the full what do you call this, benefits of being a member. Like, for example, to get a pour card in Vegas, right? You have a union versus non-union. I was curious about that. But yeah, let's move forward now. This amazing platform that you have there in your dashboard. Care to explain that, because that is very relevant, especially here in the Philippines. Actually, after this, I really want to show this in my pages, because we can learn a lot from what you have established there. So go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So barmagic.com /relief. And this is the hospitality dashboard for North America. And what this is, it is just a aggregate. It's just a collection, a portal for a little over right now. It's about almost 600 and change hospitality relief resources all in one place that is hopefully, I think, organized so that you can find things quickly. So if you're in North America and you live in Missouri and you want to know where there's a relief center that you can get food, you just click on the map of the United States, click on Missouri, and boom, up pops a list of links that take you right to those things. And it is, it's relief centers, relief funds, small business advice, articles about this whole crisis. It is playbooks for reopening, unemployment insurance navigation, how to talk to your landlord about rent, whether you're a person, individually or as a company. I mean, it's pretty, I think it's pretty extensive. I want to say I haven't seen too many other resources that are quite as robust. And the whole thing is just help people. Just when people need help, when you need help in the United States and you're in trouble, you dial 911. It's 3 numbers and everyone knows the number. Everybody over the age of 8 knows 911. And 911 works because it's short and simple and fast, and it gets you what you need. And that's how people think in crisis. So that was the whole idea was, what does someone in crisis need? I don't think they need lots of commentary and opinions and tons of descriptions. It's very noisy and confusing when there's chaos and crisis. They just need something now to help, and that's all it is. It's a dashboard with a lot of data on it, so you can kind of I know right now, for example, I think you guys have something like 11,028 cases and 726 dead. And that all those numbers and graphs and all that stuff, just neat and tidy, one page, one site. And I update it every single day since it launched on March 19th. With the help of Hanya Woodman, and two other people. Yep, there's a small group of us: Tony McGuire, Adam Zucker, and a couple other people. We've had the USBG has had volunteers come in and out and do little pieces here and there. So it's a small group of people that volunteer their time, and we keep that thing updated every day.
Okay, so how does a company come in? Let's say a company wants to donate something. So do they coordinate with you, or do they go directly to the dashboard?
Donate to what? To one of the funds?
Relief, yeah, to one of the funds.
Yeah, a couple people have called me. I mean, I try to refer them a little bit, but I'm not trying to be involved in any of this. I'm just a platform. It's just a tool. So I don't take any donations, and I don't try to organize that. And that's not, I don't think what one of my strengths are. So I kind of stay away from all that. I think that the people that are donating and fundraising and all that, it's pretty complicated over here. If you do something national, there's a lot of legalities.
Yeah, I understand.
So it's not something I wanted to kind of get entrenched in. You need to look sometimes, or at least I do. I look at 3 things every day when I make a decision about how to help. One is bandwidth, footprint, and impact. How much bandwidth do I have? How much of a footprint do I make to create what kind of impact? And I'm always going for low bandwidth, low footprint, high impact. And if I can find things that are that, then I do them. If one of those is out of whack, then I really sit there and go, how valuable is this to the world? Is it really worth taking attention or resources away from something else? Or is it worth me spending, right now I'm doing I'm doing a high bandwidth, low footprint, high impact project that I made that decision that it's valuable enough that I'll invest a couple of weeks of hours and hours and all day doing that. So right now I'm doing it's not a playbook, but it's a guide. It's a guidebook. It's 50 some pages right now. It's probably going to launch, I'm not sure when, but it'll be about probably 60 or 70 pages. And it is just ideas from around the world on what operators, bar and restaurant operators and employees can do right now, mostly operators, to prepare to reopen, or even to discuss, should you reopen? How are you making that decision? Are you informed? Are you making an informed decision that uses science, history, data, logic, common sense, reason, numbers? Why are you trying to reopen now? And to put it in perspective for those people that are so in this mess that they haven't stopped for a minute to take a breath, we've got a lot of very respected restaurateurs, like Elizabeth Blau in Las Vegas, probably the most famous chef, or one of them in Vegas. She's not opening up right away. She could have opened up technically, I think today, but really Saturday. But she said, we want to do this the right way. So we're going to take a step back, look at all the guidelines, see how they impact our employees, our guests, and make sure that we make informed decisions that are in the best interest and are responsible. So there's so many great ideas that other people have that I thought, I keep seeing them parsed, like they're all over and they're disparate. So what if I bring them all together, make it visual, and just push it out as a free document? So decision making, at least for me on this stuff, it comes down to what can I get done quickly that is the most helpful, that does not distract or take away from the people that I think are doing the real work. Like I'm sitting in my house, on a computer. I'm not Jose Andreas, and I'm not Naomi out Pomeroy out in Portland. I'm not any of these people. I'm not Chef Lee that's risking my life. I'm not a grocery store worker who's out there with a mask on every day, possibly getting infected, doing that kind of work. So I feel like I owe it to them to be impactful, to figure out things that actually might help other people.
Okay. So talking about COVID now, so what do you think? What is any opinion on what's the new norm when it comes to the bar industry?
Yes, I don't know that anyone wants to hear it, but I've seen.
That's all right.
I've seen every playbook I can get my hands on that deals with not just our industry, but other industries, and how they're going to reopen and function under these guidelines and conditions where we are right now. And everyone I've read, it makes me go, this is unbelievable what they have to go through. Like hotels, they've got the room has to be unoccupied for a day or two before, then they clean, then 3 days. There's just so many protocols that are new. But they make sense. Like, they're difficult, they're complex, but I get it. There's nothing like that for bars, because whatever you think of, it's like, yeah, that's not going to work. It doesn't, how do you take a business model that relies on putting a lot of people close together at a time when you can't put a lot of people close together? So the other thing that informs my decisions is, I think what happens too often is, I think everyone rushes to be heard instead of to hear, and they want to be in the conversation without spending the same amount of time to be well informed, to be part of the conversation. And I'll give you an example. I don't think most people understand what flattening the curve really means. And I say that because, at least in the United States, we have a lot of governments that are reopening. And we have a lot of people that think we should reopen because the curve is flattening. All the curve flattening means is we're no longer an exponential crisis. We are an arithmetic crisis. So we're not going like this anymore, but we're not going like that. We're going like this. It's just steady. It's steady growth. So people look at that chart that shows the number of new cases every day, and that's a bell curve going kind of like this. That's still adding 70,000 cases in the U.S. every day. It's not, the problem isn't getting less. So what's happening now is people are basically, and they'll get mad with me for saying this, but it's what they're doing. They're saying, we just jumped out of an airplane and we pulled the parachute and we started to slow down. We don't need the parachute anymore. Yeah, you do. You need the parachute until your feet hit the ground safely. That's when you take the parachute off. So that's the first piece, is being better informed and understanding like the physics of how droplets travel and all that. And there's a really great article that is about to pop onto my dashboard that talks from a virologist who's been doing this her entire life, and it talks about the number of droplets that to create infection, and then all the different things that cause how many droplets, like sneezing and coughing, and how things travel. And it doesn't mean that you read one paper and you make a decision, but it means being informed to know what's out there, right? So unfortunately, I think a lot of places are going to open sooner than they should for safety and the health of the country and the world. And I think that, this isn't what I want to have happen, and this isn't what should happen. And I cannot wait to be wrong. There's nothing I've wanted to be wrong about more in my life, but here's what I think is going to happen. I think a lot of people are going to open up too soon. The state's going to open up too soon. The numbers are going to start going right back up, and then we're going to go right back into another lockdown, and we're going to go right back into another problem, and it's going to be worse the second time around, and a lot of people are going to die that didn't need to, and that's the truth. That's what I think is going to happen. Now, to think that this is going to happen in a large blanketed, one-size-fits-all way is absurd, because it won't. And that's why I get I feel very good and happy when I hear governors who are governing by listening to their local county commissioners and local leaders so that they can see that if you live in Colorado, I'll use it as an example. What's happening in Denver isn't what's happening in Pitkin County and Aspen. These are two different bubbles. They're two different places with different populations, different medical facilities and needs and abilities, different numbers of cases. And in Pitkin County, as of yesterday, from what a good friend of mine told me, they haven't had a new case in a while, not one. So what happens there doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing that happens in Denver, and therefore a statewide mandate is a one-size-fits-all solution that isn't necessarily it. So it's very nuanced. It's very complicated. I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen because of the speed at which everything is happening. But I think if you spent about an hour, 30 minutes to an hour, instead of arguing or defending your position and just spent an hour reading from both sides of the aisle, at least over here, data, science, medical reports, history, graphs, charts, all of it, I think it's hard to do that and think that, let's just open back up and put up some shower curtains and some face masks and we'll be all good. Because we won't be, because that's not how it's going to work, unfortunately. I wish it did. I wish more than anything it did, but that's not going to be the way that it goes down. So.
No, I feel you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Yeah, no, even here, I mean, at one point, you can't really, it's about survival now. I mean, every 2 months is a long time. No money. I'm speaking on what's happening here, for example. No money, no work. Money is going out instead of coming in, and now there's supposedly our quarantine ends on the 15th, but then again, there has been a lot of debates or meetings and recommendations on how each municipality and region should deal with the situation. Like, for example, my city, I would say we're pretty disciplined, in fairness, compared to the other municipalities, wherein we had the least number of cases with COVID. But then again, me personally, guilty as charged, because I needed really to buy something, but I rode a car, and you see the main road. It's just like a normal day. You know what I mean? It's like I'm scratching my head. Okay, so I wonder, when will we have our regular lives back? So
when will we go back to old Earth, as Leo deGrasse likes to call it? Well, I don't think we're gonna. And I think one of the other things that if you look back, if you just kind of if you can take a breath sometimes and detach yourself from your lens and step back outside of your agendas and needs and fears and concerns and just try to look at the whole picture. You look at behavioral psychology and sociology, and you look at the way human beings have always reacted to things. You get a lot of answers as to how things will go. And I bring that up because, for example, I think the model that Chris Lauder showed in China, in Shanghai, that uses the QR codes for red, green, and yellow, and the state-mandated government app that tracks temperature and the temperature checks throughout the city, and the incredible speed and technology at which they and even South Korea have done contact tracing or disease tracing. You see a model that works, but it works because of a cultural and a government accepted culture of we before me. And we don't have that in the U.S. We're the opposite. we're a me before, we are absolutely 100% a me before we society. When I say 100%, I don't mean 100% of the people feel that way. I mean, your society is either we before me or me before we. You can't be both.
No.
You're both. You're one, and we're a me before we. There's no universe where you're going to get people, the same people who are standing on City Hall without masks, with AK-47s, crying about the fact they've been locked up for a few weeks, that they need their rights, even while thousands of people are dying and hundreds of thousands and millions are in peril. These people are never going to accept a government, a check for temperature randomly throughout the city and all these other mandates. So we have to think, how do we take the culture we have that we're not going to change overnight, and how do we create a system that allows to reopen responsibly, that still allows us to attack this enemy, this disease? How do we attack this invisible enemy? What do we do? So I don't have a short-term answer at all. I do know what the long-term answer will probably look like, because it just makes sense, right? So we know this isn't going to be the last pathogen or viral pandemic that this country or this world has, for sure. So we know it's coming back again, whether it's COVID-19 or COVID whatever number or something else. So how do you attack an invisible enemy? Well, it's just like art of war stuff. It's basic stuff. You make it visible. So the first thing we're going to see, I don't know when, but soon, there's going to be medical technology that allows us, you're probably going to walk through what I would guess is going to be like a 6, 8, 10-foot scanning tunnel, and it'll do all the regular biometrics that we already have. But at some point in the future, I don't know if that's 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, at some point, it will be able to detect viruses and pathogens and also disinfect. And I think probably within about 5 years, most businesses and every 1 in 3 homes will have some little portico entrance, a little box where you put your stuff, which we already have, that within 30 seconds destroys 99 point whatever percent of all bacteria and virus, and that'll be one way. So I think technology, science will come into play and give us the new normal, more so than shower curtains and face masks. But for now, I think it's going to be everything. I think we're going to see successes, failures, and in my country at least, because we're going to have both, we're going to have people arguing for both. So there's going to be people pointing to the successes saying, see, we don't have any cases here, and see, this thing worked in our restaurant. And at the exact same time, we're going to have people going, see, that restaurant didn't wear masks, or they did this, and look at all these people that got sick.
Yeah.
And we'll probably continue to argue and bicker and fight and become more divided until we get a leader that brings us together. And as soon as this country gets a leader that starts pulling people together, maybe we've got a chance to change that narrative, but I don't think that we have that in the cards right now.
Okay. Well, okay. On a lighter note, so I wasn't able to ask you this. So technically, what do you do now? Do you have a bar? Do you have your consultancy firm? What do you do? I mean, before COVID, basically.
I'm mostly, what's up, Tosh? I mostly try to figure out how to take frozen pizzas and make them feel like pizzeria pizzas, because we're quarantined and I've got asthma, and so does my girlfriend. What I do is I do experience design, which is just really, it's everything I've done for 20 years. So I go from the whole pipeline of development through opening. So I consult and design, and I put them together. So I don't just design products or environments and then run. I think about how they are connected to the rest of the environment. So but mostly what I'm doing is designing equipment, designing bars, and then designing the workflows. And if it's a union environment, then it's the union protocols and the SOPs. If it's for a scaled organization, then I have to think about, like, I'll give you an example, is one of the most challenging things about designing efficient ergonomic bars for bartenders in scaled companies is that the reality of the way that things are built, you can design the perfect prototype that you know works, but when it goes into that space, that building that's differently shaped, the GC, the contractor, they're going to move it around. And the minute they move it around, you break all those efficiencies and it doesn't work. So you have to think, how do I build an unbreakable model? And it's that same thinking that I'm on a task force with Jackie Summers and a handful of hospitality individuals and leaders, and he brings that up a lot, which is how do we, this model, this hospitality model broke like that. 1 week, this industry fell apart and people lost their livelihoods forever. They lost their jobs. So how do we rebuild, not the old model, how do we rebuild a new model that's harder to break? I think those are Jackie's exact words. And he's right on point. Is it about reopening the same place you had with just a few extra things? Or is it about looking at your model the way Jimmy Yeager did in Aspen a couple years ago when he looked at the inequality of the income and the riskiness of tipped employees? And he said, okay, I'm going to look at Danny Meyer's, tip pool model and all the different tip pool models. And then he worked on a new model for his business that was harder to break. And I think if every operator and every business leader looked right now, as much as possible as we get out of triage and into reopening and rebuilding, and looked at how do we make this industry harder to break, that is where we'll see a more of a quantum shift, to use the scientific term very poorly. Hope there's no scientists on this, but that's where we make that leap, that real leap forward that helps us actually stay in business and never have this happen to this degree again. If we just all rush to open back up because, and I get it, because we don't have income and we're all going in debt. I mean, I'm a hospitality consultant. My business went just like that. And my girlfriend's a bartender and she won't be bartending again. We don't know when. She works at a day club. They're not going to reopen this season. So, how do we build all of these small businesses and larger businesses and industries that are part of our ecosystem that includes supply chain and the liquor, beer, wine, spirits industry, right? Ops, equipment, design, technology, all of it, legal, all the pieces. How do we rebuild them all so that the next time we have a global crisis like this, we don't have 8 million out of 15 million people sitting home out of work, going into debt, wondering what the hell they're going to do next. And we don't have Pagan Club and Daddy-O and Elevis and Madison Park and Clyde Common and all these iconic bars and restaurants closing forever and people losing their livelihoods. We need to change the legislation, at least in this country. And Mark Shetler in New Orleans is working with a group called HERD on that, which is on my dashboard as well. This all sounds great. This is a great conversation, and all the people are doing this little stuff. But if we don't change our representation and we don't change what happens in Washington, D.C., and in each country, if you don't change the laws so that they actually protect small businesses, specifically hospitality in the industry, then we don't change anything. And we're right back in this position. So it's great to talk about, the little things we're doing now because those have to happen. But this is one of those things where we were in a sprint and the marathon just started and there's no break in between. So we went from sprint to marathon in the last week and now we're in marathon mode. And marathoners have to preserve their energy. They got to take care of their mental health and wellness at places like Restaurant After Hours, also on the dashboard at barmagic.com. Plug.
Yeah.
Figure out how do we stay. Get him, Shinobi. Get him. No visitors. Social distancing. Attack.
Yeah, social distancing.
So how do we stay healthy and well and support each other and sane, yet restart the economy, but also protect the people? This is the most complicated problem that I am aware of in my lifetime that the industry and maybe possibly the world has faced at the same time. So I don't think there's going to be any magic bean solutions or any one paper or document that's going to go, hey, here you go, guys, just do this and everything will be fine. That's not how we're going to see it. And I think we're also, unfortunately, we're probably going to have to let Mother Nature be involved. I think we're going to have to see some herd immunity, some vaccines, which isn't Mother Nature, but some larger pieces have to come into play as well. The idea that 15 million people in America, at least, and our limited resources can solve this problem. I think it's the first time that the hospitality industry doesn't make it happen. And that's what we are, right? We're people that 15 minutes before service, in the weeds, there's no way we're opening our doors. And yet what do we do every single time? We make it happen with a smile. I don't know if we can make it happen this time. And I think the sooner some people accept that, the better their resilience to not accept it and solve in a different way. But I think you do have to accept some of the realities that I think some people are putting blinders on and saying that's not a big deal. The flu has killed more people. No, it hasn't. No, it has not. and it's the if you actually look at all the data, you see the difference, because the cases reported on the flu are not reported scientifically. They're estimates.
Yeah.
And number two, the flu doesn't strain the healthcare system to the point of collapse. And this pandemic has in a number of municipalities and cities. So get informed, find out what's being done. Don't, collaborate, don't duplicate. And then think about the 3 stages of this crisis. The triage, how do we stop the bleeding for the people that are in the greatest risk now? The rebuild, what's the safe, responsible way to reopen? And as we do that, how do we prevent this from happening again? And they all have to happen at the same time because they're all interconnected. Robin Nance was talking about really being concerned about the workers in need right now, and a lot of people are focusing on the businesses. And I asked her the question, I said, well, we're in a task force, and I said, well, which group would you like to focus on? The ones focusing on the workers or the ones on the businesses? And she's like, well, that's not fair, because we need the workers' needs factored into those long-term business decisions, that their voices have to be in there. And she's absolutely right. So if you're going to get involved in this sticky mess and try to solve it for more than yourself, you've got to realize that you're sprinting and marathoning and looking at all these things at once. And yet you've got to take the time to say it's okay to take a day off and sit around and have a Negroni or take a nap or read a book and not think about this all the time, so that you don't, destroy your own health.
Yeah. No. It's really messy. It's messy in a way. No, you're right. And but I gotta hand it to you. This talk of ours is I would say like an awakening, of sorts, because it gives me a picture of how the U.S. is. In fact, I have most of my cousins are there in Orange County and Seattle, so.
Nice.
Well, they're just indoors basically, but with this talk of ours, it's something that I need to tag them, so at least they can see also what's going on, and maybe they will support or be more proactive in handling the situation. By the way, we might be cut in 2 minutes, so I want to, because we have some people who joined us now. Natasha Sophia is here, Tome, Alec is here, yeah.
Tome.
Kia is from the Philippines. She's still awake. So I think, nothing to do anyway but Netflix and whatnot. So shout out to everyone. So I think we're gonna be cut. I'll reset it, and maybe I'll ask you last 3 questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sounds great.
Okay. All right, guys. So I'll cut this first. We'll reset your questions. If you have, please ask them, and then we'll wrap up. All right. So see you in 1 minute. Okay. So again, welcome to Toma Sessions Live with Richie and our guest from barmagic.com, Tobin Ellis. Welcome. So let's just wait for Tobin to join us again. And for those who just came in, welcome to Toma Sessions Live with Richie Cruz. Be informed and be inspired. Hi Kia, good morning. Oh no more. I'm not drinking anything. I just finished. But this session will. Okay, hold on. Let me just check on Tobin. Oh, it was good. It was good. Well, no, I was working. But yeah. Hello, welcome guys. So actually, we will the schedule for this Toma Sessions will play this on our FB page. So please, we'll send you the link. Okay, there he is. Welcome back. And we are back. All right, there you go. Welcome back. All right, so again, this is this is one thing I've expected with you already. I mean, the no nonsense and all, like when you do a talk, I mean, it's really it's for a cause, and that's one thing I admire about you from those days, from day one. And
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I mean, there are a few. In fact, especially when it comes to rights of people, because that's one thing. Here in the Philippines, if I may also, we're not at that level yet. I mean, we're pretty much, I would say, maybe because of our culture. So we're more of, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, thank you, I'm sorry, I do apologize. For those of us that aren't Americanized, I mean, I'm pretty sure you know a lot of Filipinos there. In Vegas or in the States, so that's a totally different scenario. So, but at hindsight, I do wish we were at that mindset or perspective, because it's not being offensive, but you are trying to convey a message that deserves an answer, basically, right? So.
I think what's difficult for everyone, especially in the U.S., is we have allowed. So our country was basically built, and I'm being a little facetious, but our country was basically built on one simple idea: go fuck yourself. Right?
Okay.
This is what we said. This is what we said to England. We said, go fuck yourself. We don't want you to rule us. We want to do it ourselves. And it's funny, but we've always been this, like, no one's going to tell me what to do, and my freedom, and there's some beauty in that. There's some beauty in it, but along with it came a lot of baggage, and that underbelly of that culture has now been exposed, and we've realized what the price is and what comes with that, the baggage. For example, we're so divided in this country, and why that matters right now is I'm trying very hard to have conversations with anyone who is somewhat informed or wants to be, and who wants to talk about this situation. And one of the hardest things is that, like, I can talk to someone who I have completely different views with, not agree with them at all, passionately explain or defend or whatever, to have that conversation, and then be fine right after it and have a beer with them. It's very rare that you find people that can do that have that level of emotional maturity, that can say, yeah, I'm passionate about my beliefs, and I believe strongly in this, and I still respect you. I respect you as a person and as a fellow man, but I don't agree with your views at all.
Your view.
At all. And I can be passionate about that. And that's one of the reasons it's hard to have that conversation in this country, is because we are so divided, and we have not spent decades and decades, or even weeks and weeks, allowing ourselves to have these pointed conversations that we need to have in a respectful place. And they are happening. I'm not saying they don't happen, but not widespread throughout the whole country. So, we have these echo chambers now. And I'll give an example. So I put the link just up on the barmagic.com dashboard. It's right at the top for Aaron Bromage about knowing the risks. And this is the question I'd ask, and whoever's watching this right now, if you're an operator and you're going to reopen, if you can't tell me what the actual physics of how this disease spreads are, then all I would say to you pointedly is you're not making a well-formed decision to reopen. I didn't say you shouldn't reopen. I didn't say you're dumb. I didn't say that anything. All I said was, if you don't know how the disease spreads, really know distances physically, droplets, what is it? Do you know the difference between aerosolized and airborne? I'll bet you that 99 out of 100 operators don't know the difference in what those two things are. And if you're one of the few that do, help other people understand it, because information is power, and having the information allows you to make better decisions. The more information, there's no information that gives you a worse decision. I don't know, there's no fear. Like, I'll read stuff from the other side of the aisle, the political views I don't agree with. It doesn't damage me. It doesn't make me dumber. It makes me smarter because I'm more informed about what other people think that don't think like me. So that's all I'd say to people is get informed, know what you're about to do. You can't pretend to get a medical degree overnight by reading an article, and you shouldn't, but you can certainly pick up a couple things like, gosh, I didn't know that a sneeze travels 200 miles an hour and has a range of, someone told me 23 feet. I'm like, 23 feet? Droplets from sneezes can go 60 feet, but what's more important is the droplets can hang in the air for several minutes, and then they attach on surfaces.
Okay,
so all it takes is one person sneezing without a mask, and the whole room now is at risk. And it's not alarmist. That's just science. That's not new science. That's the science of sneezing, which has been around for 100 years or more. So that's kind of the freedom we have in this country to express these views. We've all grown up knowing that, like, it's good to do this, but we've also created this culture where we say that, but we're more inclined to argue and try to want to argue for the sake of arguing or protecting the things that we are so attached to, instead of arguing as a way to uncover truths and increase the collective conscious and make us smarter as a culture, or even just a room of people. That's what discourse was supposed to be for, right?
Yeah.
It's for us to all learn,
Be informed, be inspired, Toma Sessions. So, in fact, the only thing missing now is a beer, no? And I totally agree. That's why, because of the time difference, it's really hard to do it. But I will make this message really come across, because it's not only in the States, but it's the whole world. In fact, in a way, hats off, like in Asia now, Hong Kong just reopened, Vietnam. Who else has reopened? I think only those two. But before, if you remember, Japan was the least. I think they had least incidents, but now it suddenly went up. So
I mean, this is the stuff that I'm talking about, right? So people, they get their information, they get somewhat informed, and then they run off to do the task. And I look at, like, the reopenings, right? So something like, I think it was 7 out of the first 9 states in the United States to reopen all had massive spikes in new cases. Now, I'm not jumping to a conclusion and saying that I'm a scientist or a statistician, and for sure that reopening restaurants in those states is a big reason that happened. But I'm also not an idiot saying, gosh, there couldn't possibly be a connection. Of course there's a connection. Of course, somewhere between those two polarized extremes, there's something inside of that. There's something there that caused that to happen, and that's what we should be looking at and being a little more careful. So someone's making a comment about durations of exposure and shirt, and that's really about that's really just quickly, that when I brought up the sneeze comment, you need to read. You need to read I can't say it in 30 seconds, but time of exposure, number of droplets, and existing obviously health conditions and safety protocols are all factors that are going to determine how much you can infect a room with a cough or a sneeze. But my point, that's not my point. My point always is never to argue about a tiny little specific that would take nuance that would take a half an hour to do, and I'm not a scientist. It's to say, if you don't have that information, if you don't even know that that's a factor, what are you doing? If you're just putting up shower curtains and cleaning them a lot, like, I'll give you a great example, right? So the guidelines here in the U.S. are, one of the ones I read about immediately is the social distancing, which it turns out social distancing is actually much more effective and was meant to talk about in outdoor and society and running into each other, and in grocery stores, really large spaces. Social distancing is far less effective in confined spaces with confined airflow, but not to belabor that. So you reopen your restaurant, you distance every other booth or every other table, and you space them out. Great. How do people get to those tables? How do they get to the bathroom? How do they get back? Because I've been in a lot of bars and restaurants, and I've designed a ton of them, and I can't name 3 bars or restaurants that have 14-foot aisleways between tables, which is what you would need to have a 2-foot wide person have 6 feet on either side of them to travel back and forth between tables. And so now you're going to say masks, and I'm going to go, that's great. How do you eat with a mask on? And instead of arguing to be right about that point, I'm staying back and looking at the environment and saying, no, you're not listening. If you can't have the social distancing space between the tables or to the restaurant, into the restaurant and out, or to the bathrooms and back, then you are not staying 6 feet away. So now you are increasing the risk that you just said you solved because the tables were closer.
Yeah.
So if that's happening, obviously people are taking their masks off to eat and drink. If that person releases droplets through breathing, which they do over the course of an hour, coughing or sneezing, we have a problem. I'm not saying don't reopen, and I'm not saying that let's argue for an hour about masks. I'm saying step back, look at the information and the environment, and solve the problem. So, for example, one restaurant solution, I'm sure many was, they put tape down on the floorways and created one-way aisles like grocery stores did to and from the bathrooms. Now, not everyone will do that, but some did. And they also put up a signal light, like on an airplane, that shows you when the bathroom is occupied or not, so people don't get up and create a line by the bathroom. That's the point of having these discussions. The point of having these pointed discussions when they are is to get the ideas out, is to get people to think more critically, like an engineer does. When an engineer thinks about a problem, they don't just go, here's the problem, I'm going to solve it. The first thing an engineer does is says, here's the problem, now let's enlarge the problem area to see what systems are affected by the change to the system we're trying to fix. Because if we fix this, and it fixes this, but it changes all these ones and it messes them up, then what's the point? It's made it worse all over. That's the problem we're trying to solve for right now. So I think we need more of that thinking, more of that critical thinking that drops agendas and political views and personal biases and says, can we solve this system? What are we not solving for? What can we solve for better? That's, I think, how we move forward effectively together.
Okay. So now is Vegas totally closed, or there are a few restaurants that are open?
So we're in phase 1 of reopening, and the Governor Sisolak announced that Saturday that restaurants can start having dine-in again at 50% occupancy here today, which a lot of restaurants are hustling to do, a local. But it's complicated here because if you're inside of a casino, then even if you don't have gaming, the machines, you still have to have a gaming license, and so you're regulated by the Gaming Commission. And gaming is not allowed yet, and it's very complicated.
I see.
And then it has to do with entrances and exits freestanding from the casino. So the strip is closed, but reopened partially, a little bit, if it falls under very specific criteria. But off the strips, a few restaurants are reopening, and I guess this is a living experiment, and we will, fortunately or unfortunately, or probably more realistically both, we will learn about successes, things that help, and we will learn about mistakes we made that are making it worse. And I don't think we're going to see we're not going to see this. And I don't think we're going to see this. I think we're going to see this. And if you zoom out and look long term, if we don't make a lot of critical errors globally, I think it's going to look like that over time. Like we're going to get through this. There will be a bar and restaurant world again, and this will be a piece of history that will have changed us and scarred us forever, but we'll come out stronger and smarter. And if we look to the models that are working, and if we are able to just for a second step back, drop some of our attachments to our ideas that we are sure are important, and look at what are we going to do that doesn't have such an exhaust port on the Death Star that's so easy to just cripple us all and destroy us. To throw out a nerdy reference, that's what we had right now. It was so easy for this whole industry to fall apart, just like that. Done. Millions and millions and millions of livelihoods and lives. That's it. That's where the win comes. The win comes because we take this huge, painful, deadly, terrible hit, and then we get back up and we come back different and stronger. Not the same with duct tape on us saying, it'll be okay. And that's the opportunity here. The opportunity is for everyone, even personal finance. A friend of mine made a good point very early on and said, a good point that was a little entitled, but said, how are people not have enough money? It's the end of March. How are they not able to pay their April rent just because they lost their job? They don't have 1 week's of savings. And I went, there's a lot of people in this country that don't have the ability. Some of it's their own fault, and some of it's not their fault. The single mother, a parent working with 2 kids who's at the poverty line, who is just getting by, never gets ahead. And those people have been left behind. It's the rich getting richer at the expense of the poor, which has also been exposed. But if we're going to be honest, we're going to talk real. How many bartenders, right, who make 150, 200, 300, whatever they make a night, are taking and looking at that income and going, I know what my budget is, so I know that 61% of that has to go to my cost, 30% goes to this, that leaves me 9%, so I can spend $13 or $17 tonight for a drink. How many people do that? How many people even have a personal budget? How many people have a long-term budget finance plan? You have to take a little responsibility and say, I need to fix my own business of myself. And then when you're healthier, financially, emotionally, physically, all of it, we get together and we say, okay, it's really hard to do that because of the way the legislation works and the way that this hospitality model with these razor thin margins work. How do we fix that? When are we going to stand up to landlords and say, it's not okay that you own 14 buildings and you are a multimillionaire and you are creating an environment for this industry where if we're not perfect all the time, if we slip up for 1 week, we're out of business. That's insane. What kind of business partner are you as a landlord if that's how you're setting up the people that are paying you, putting food on your table? That's disgusting.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of good people out there ready to do it. So,
okay, this just popped out of my head. Have you considered running for office?
No, hell no. I'd be a terrible politician.
No, I mean,
Listen, I tell people all the time on these groups, I go, I'm a sniper. That's all I've ever been. I move fast. I'm agile. I'm usually ahead of the landscape. I get the intel. I can focus on a target, and I can hit the target dead between the eyes. That's all I do. You don't want a sniper running the show. You need a general. You need people. I'm not a general. I'm not a lieutenant. I'm a semi-disobedient soldier, and because I'm disobedient and don't always follow orders, is why I get ahead of the rest of the group sometimes and figure things out. Because I go, everyone's going that direction because that's the marching order, and I don't think that's the right way to go. That doesn't make sense. I'm going to go this way, and and sometimes it blows up in my face, but mostly I think I try to have some discipline and go, I want to work under a good leader who understands how to use me most effectively. And most effectively, don't tie me down in bureaucracy and red tape because I have a disdain for it. I'm someone who says, when there's a problem or a crisis, I'll go back to Jackie Summers. Slow, quick. Let's sit down. Let's slowly, calmly get all the information. Let's get informed. Let's plan things out. Let's discuss it. And then once we have a plan that's pretty solid, let's get our asses up and let's get this work done. And with that point, a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, I got this thing I got to do. Or what about this? And I don't know how I feel about that. I'm like, look, I'm not going to sit here and babysit you. That's what people that are better at managing do. Really, right? Restaurant managers are really creative, talented babysitters.
Yes,
and they're motivators and leaders, but a lot of people just don't want to be led. I don't want to try to lead people that don't want to be led. I just want to go, let's go over there and do that work, and let's build this or rebuild this and fix this. Where are the workers? I want to be in that small pack of workers that want to go out there and do the work and fix it from an informed perspective. Now, I'm a worker. I'm not a leader.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm a merc with a mouth. Like
no,
that.
but I mean,
I love to be a chimichanga. I love it.
Now, my next question. Well, okay, maybe last two questions because I enjoyed really this conversation. I'm learning a lot. USBG. So how is USBG involved within the Vegas population, or maybe the whole U.S. population of bartenders?
Well, I'm not going to speak for that organization because I'm not informed enough, and that wouldn't be responsible. I can tell you that what I've experienced from the USBG over the years. I mean, it started. Vegas was one of the first chapters. It's a handful of people that happen to be good friends of mine now that started it. It started very mixology and sort of older hotel bartender focused, and then it grew. Someone that used to work for me that I was very close to, Kristen Schaefer, maiden name. Kristen became president of the USG in Las Vegas and grew it to open up and involve bartenders regardless of their stylistic choice. That model, I think, trickled out or was already trickling out to the rest of the country. And with this crisis, I know, speaking firsthand with Kim Hasarud, that their membership has greatly grown to involve everyone, not just people who are into mixology, which is great, which is probably with the title United States Bartenders Guild, it should.
Yeah.
So
perfect.
Yeah, and they've been huge in this, distributing. I don't know the number. I don't want to quote it. I don't want to be wrong.
No worries.
Millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of applications. A group of volunteers working, hundreds of volunteers working day and night to process all the legalities of those applications. They threw dozens of volunteers my way, other people's way. I think they're doing great work, and my experience with them has been great. So I'm grateful that the organization exists, because if they weren't here, I don't know that there'd be any other single group in the United States, at least, solely looking out for bartenders in this time. I mean, maybe like some of the media publications and things, but not a not-for-profit organization like the USBG Foundation, which is a not-for-profit that's handling all that. So I think it's great. There's organizations that exist for bartenders, sommeliers, cooks, all the different hourly workers, housekeepers that are looking to protect their interests and be one voice to the government and to the establishment to try to get them to work. Those organizations have the ability to enact change. You know, when you look at something like this, is terrifying. There are 400 individuals on this planet, 400, whose combined net worth more than equals everyone else's combined. If they took 20% of those trillions of dollars that they control, that they can't spend, they couldn't spend it if they tried, and they will die not spending it. If they took 20% of that money, they could solve just about every problem we have in the world in terms of feeding and housing and medicine and all the issues and fighting disease, all the things that we could solve if we had more resources, they could solve it. But instead, 7.7 billion people have decided in whatever way that we're okay being distracted with consumerism and everything else to allow those 400 people to just continue accumulating absurd, obscene, unnecessary wealth while we all suffer, or a lot of us suffer or die or can't do the things that would make the world better, because that's the world we've built, this consumer world. So there's these huge problems, but if we start working together, truly working together in a way that allows for the best ideas to come forward And for restaurant theory, aces and places, let the leaders lead, let the snipers snipe, let the workers work, let the builders build, and we reorganize our industry. We have the ability to start attacking some of those things. Like, look what we did when the PPP loans in the U.S. came out and all the big companies gobbled them up. And right away, because we have these platforms now on social media, etc., we said, what the? No fucking way. You are not taking a $12 million loan when you're a $300 million organization. And the loans got returned through that pressure. We have the ability. We have the power. We just don't know we have the power, and we're not harnessing it as long as we're infighting. So I have always said, this is terrible that this is true, but I said years ago, I said, the only thing I think that could bring the United States back together is a common enemy from the outside. I was really hoping it was going to be cool-looking aliens that were pretty powerful, but we could overtake, and it would be kind of fun, so I could get that whole sci-fi fantasy thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know it would be something as devastating and terrible and not funny as this.
Oh, wow. Biohazard.
Hopefully we learn from this as countries and as a species and as a planet to start solving some of these big problems instead of all these little infighting, unimportant problems, and start focusing on the big picture.
Nice. Very, very well said. I think we have no more questions also from our viewers. But any final words of inspiration apart from that one?
Yeah, sure. I guess it's this. It's one. To anyone listening who's scared, nervous, uncertain, frustrated, angry, most of those emotions are secondary emotions. Fear is primal, but anger is a secondary emotion. It's a fact. If you're angry, that's not what really is going on. There's something else. So when we have these emotions, if you can for a second, just stop for 30 seconds, breathe, meditate, think, don't think. Just try to figure out what's really going on? What am I upset about? The quicker you can do that as one person, the quicker you can get back in the game so that you can help. So the more that you can just really kind of think, if I'm a valuable person, right? If I have some skill that can help this crisis, but I'm busy arguing with someone or I'm getting angry or frustrated, not only am I not helping, I'm pulling them out of the game too. So every time you catch yourself, and I do it too, you catch yourself in a bickering or an online, and that's wrong, and this data says that, and what are you talking about? Instead of that, just recognize it, stop for a second, and go, wait a minute. I'm fighting for the disease right now. I'm fighting for the other side. And just stop and think about we before me. If I help other people, this is the most truest thing I learned from that manager when I was 18, Bill Harbison, the most truest thing I've learned about business in general. If you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want eventually. It'll come. Focus on others, right? We talk about we're the service industry. What did Mahatma Gandhi say? Put yourself in the service of others. That's where bliss and beauty and peace is. If you're in a terrible time in your life, the best thing you can do right away is just focus on other people. Put your energy into helping. Help the helpers. Become a helper, and don't get in the way of the helpers. Help other people and we'll get through this. Focus on others. That's it.
Service first.
Keep the
Service
faith.
first.
I've been saying keep
Flair
the faith for 30 years. Keep the faith. We got this. We will get through this. We will get through this.
Thank you, Tobin. All right, so with that, guys, thank you, Tobin, for gracing our show. I hope we enjoyed as much as this is an honor to have you here. And for those who are listening right now, so we'll have this up and about. I'm planning to air this sometime, if not last week of May, maybe first week of June. But in between that, so but it's permanently gonna be in FB Bartending School Philippines, so they can get to view it as much as they can. Okay, so with that,
Richie,
yes.
I want to throw in a PS. I really appreciate all the things that you said. Truly, it means a lot. We've known each other though not closely, but for a couple of decades. But I want to just share with you something I think you'll appreciate. I was at a bartending competition a while back with a guy that you know, and most bartenders who flip bottles do, named Christian Delpesh. And I was standing in a room with Christian Delpesh, Ken Hall, myself, and another bartender from LA walked in, big guy, started shaking. He was so nervous to meet them. He's so nervous and he's freaking out. And he goes up to Christian and he's like, and he was stuttering and just falling apart because he had him up on this pedestal.
Yeah.
And Christian just looked at him and said, "Hey man, it's cool. We both clean ashtrays for a living." And that was back when people smoked in bars. And I say the same thing, man. I really appreciate it, but we both just sling drinks for a living. And even if I'm not behind the bar full time anymore, I'm a bartender. I'll always be one. Like, I appreciate you building a platform and having me on and letting me yap my mouth, and hopefully it helps one or two people.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Yep, anytime. Yeah, Kia says, finally, well, see you in the Philippines, Tobin. So Kia is one of our gorgeous, charismatic liquor distributors in the Philippines. So yeah, she's also a very good friend. So, well, we don't know if everything is good. If you have time to go to Asia, check Philippines out, and we'll take you around.
We had a trip planned for my girlfriend and her family and I. Every year we got kind of go somewhere. We save up, and that's our whole thing. And we were going to. She's Korean. Her mom grew up in Korea. She was born in Korea. We were going to go to South Korea, Japan, Philippines, with the whole South Pacific, all of it. And obviously that's on hold for a little bit, but we'll be there, and I will stop by and we will come say hello.
Yeah. There you go.
We'll have a drink and we'll have a lot of street food and we'll have some fun.
Yeah, man. Perfect.
To the business of having a good time.
Exactly. All right. So, okay, Tobin, you have a great day ahead, and for our viewers, thank you for viewing. Yeah, Toma Sessions Live, Richie Cruz. Good night. Yes, time to sleep. Peace, brother.
Peace. May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.